Ethan never expected his life to collapse because of a single notification. He stared at the message, claiming his stored sample had been accessed. His heartbeat stumbled as confusion twisted into something darker. A mistake, he told himself, clinging to hope that felt thinner each second. But the truth waited for him at home, like a trap already sprung. His girlfriend, Lauren, avoided his eyes the moment he walked in. Her silence spoke louder than any confession could. Ethan felt the air shift before the words even formed. She had taken what was his without permission. She had given it to her best friend Abigail to create a life he never agreed to. The room felt too small to contain the shock flooding through him. In that moment, Ethan realized his world was no longer his own. Ethan stood frozen, unable to process Lauren's confession as it echoed through the room. His breath felt trapped somewhere between disbelief and fury. Lauren tried to justify everything with a soft voice that only made it worse. She said she was helping Abigail. She said Ethan would understand one day. Her words sliced into him like she had rehearsed them. Ethan couldn't recognize the woman in front of him anymore. He asked her why she thought she had any right to make that choice for him. Lauren shrugged like it was a minor mistake. She insisted no harm was done because Abigail wanted a baby so desperately. Ethan felt heat rising under his skin like a warning he could not ignore. The betrayal sat in his chest like a stone too heavy to lift. He asked her again if she understood the legal implications. Lauren laughed nervously and said it wasn't that serious. The sound made Ethan's stomach turn. He realized she truly believed she had done nothing wrong. He stepped back, suddenly aware of how far the distance between them had grown. Every memory they shared felt tainted by this single act. Ethan pulled out his phone with trembling hands. Lauren's face shifted when she recognized the device as a threat. He pressed record without hiding it. He asked her to repeat exactly what she had done. Lauren hesitated, then admitted every detail with unsettling calmness. She explained how she convinced a technician to access the storage room. She described how she delivered the container to Abigail like it was charity. Ethan's heart pounded harder with each word she repeated. The recording captured every tone, every excuse, every confession. Ethan saved the file instantly, afraid it might disappear if he blinked. Lauren reached out as if to grab his arm, but he stepped away. Her eyes widened as she realized she had finally crossed a line she couldn't erase. Ethan walked past her toward the door, needing space to breathe. Lauren called after him, begging him not to involve the police. He didn't answer. His mind was already racing toward the next steps. Outside, the night air felt colder than usual. Ethan stood under the dim porch light and dialed a number he never thought he'd need. A law office voicemail played, but he left a message anyway. His voice cracked slightly as he tried to summarize the chaos. He felt a strange combination of shame and anger for even being in this situation. When he hung up, he contacted the clinic immediately. His tone became steady, professional, almost detached. He told them he needed to check for unauthorized access. The operator paused, then promised to escalate the issue. Ethan could hear typing in the background, fast and frantic. He felt the truth beginning to gain weight behind him. He knew this wasn't just a betrayal. It was a crime committed by the person he trusted most. Ethan stared into the dark street as if it could offer answers. But all it offered was silence. And in that silence, Ethan made his first irreversible decision. Ethan woke with a heavy head after a night of restless packing. The first thing he checked was his phone for updates from the clinic. A new email waited in his inbox with a subject line that tightened his chest. The message confirmed an unauthorized access to his stored sample. The timestamp matched the day Lauren had visited Abigail's apartment. Ethan felt the room tilt as the final pieces locked into place. He forwarded the email to his lawyer with shaking hands. Then he dialed the non-emergency police line before his courage faded. His voice sounded unfamiliar as he reported the theft. The officer asked for details, and Ethan repeated everything with painful clarity. When the call ended, he leaned against the counter and let the numbness settle. Minutes later, the clinic called him back with a tense tone. They confirmed the technician responsible had been identified and removed. They apologized repeatedly, but their words felt hollow against the damage done. Ethan thanked them anyway, because he didn't know what else to say. He realized the situation was now officially bigger than him and Lauren. He walked into the living room, where Lauren sat curled on the sofa. Her eyes were red, but Ethan refused to let guilt cloud his judgment. He told her the police were notified and the clinic was cooperating. Lauren's face drained of color as the consequences became real. She begged him to reconsider and promised she could fix it. Ethan felt a flare of disbelief at how little she understood. He told her to pack her things and leave the apartment immediately. She protested, saying they could work through this if he calmed down. Ethan repeated the order with a coldness that startled even him. Lauren finally stood and started gathering her belongings with trembling hands. Her parents called while she packed, and she put them on speaker. They accused Ethan of overreacting and betraying their daughter. Ethan ended the call without a word. He refused to be manipulated into ignoring a crime against his own autonomy. Lauren left the apartment in tears, but Ethan did not follow her. He locked the door the moment it closed behind her. The silence that filled the room was sharp and painful, yet relieving. He walked to his bedroom and opened his laptop again. He created a folder for every piece of evidence he had collected. The recording, the email, the clinic confirmation, his notes from the conversation with the police. He organized them with mechanical precision, determined not to falter. His lawyer returned his call in the afternoon with a calm, steady voice. He told Ethan he had a strong case both criminally and civilly. He advised Ethan to avoid contact with Lauren and Abigail entirely. Ethan agreed without hesitation. For the first time since the truth surfaced, he felt a faint thread of control. He stood by the window watching the street below, feeling both lost and anchored. He knew this was only the beginning of a long fight. But at least now, he wasn't fighting blindly. Detectives contacted Ethan 2 days later and asked him to come in. He sat in a small interview room with pale walls and buzzing lights. An officer placed a recorder on the table and asked him to start from the top. Ethan repeated every detail with a steady voice he barely recognized. He handed over the audio file of Lauren's confession. He provided the clinic emails and timestamps linking everything together. The detective nodded slowly as each piece made the case harder to ignore. They assured Ethan a formal investigation was now underway. Walking out of the station, Ethan felt both lighter and heavier at once. He knew the truth was finally being handled by people who had power to act. But he also knew the fallout was far from over. Later that night, his phone rang with a number he didn't recognize. He answered cautiously, expecting more questions from the police. Instead, he heard Abigail's voice trembling on the other end. She apologized in a shaky whisper that carried guilt and desperation. She said she never meant to hurt him, but wanted a baby so badly it blinded her. Ethan closed his eyes, feeling anger and sorrow clash inside him. Abigail admitted she knew the sample was his before the procedure. Her confession tightened something in his chest, confirming his worst fears. She asked if he could forgive her and be a part of the child's life. Ethan told her he could not forgive what was done without his consent. He made it clear he wanted no contact until the investigation ended. Abigail cried softly, insisting she never wanted to trap him. Ethan ended the call before her words could sink deeper into him. His lawyer called minutes later, after receiving notice from the detectives. He warned Ethan that Abigail might try to claim he had paternal duties. The thought struck Ethan like an unexpected blow to the ribcage. His lawyer explained that legal systems could be complicated and unfair. He urged Ethan to stay alert and document every interaction carefully. Ethan promised to follow every instruction and keep all evidence organized. He spent the evening updating his records, feeling like he was building armor. Each file he sorted reminded him this was more than a breakup. This was a battle for control over his own future and identity. The next morning, a social worker from the clinic reached out. She confirmed that internal reviews showed clear rule violations. She assured him the hospital would fully support the investigation. Her tone carried a mix of apology and fear for what this could become. Ethan thanked her, though gratitude felt strange amid so much betrayal. He hung up and stared at his wall, trying to ground himself. His apartment felt unfamiliar now, like a place tainted by unseen shadows. He opened his blinds and let sunlight spill across the floor. The brightness didn't soothe him, but it reminded him he wasn't powerless. He sat at the table and reviewed every step he had taken so far. He knew he needed to stay ahead of whatever might happen next. He thought about how easily this could spiral if he made a single mistake. The weight of responsibility settled heavy on his shoulders. Then his phone buzzed with a new message from his lawyer. It contained a list of documents they needed to prepare for future hearings. Ethan exhaled slowly, realizing the true scale of what was coming. This wasn't just an investigation anymore. It was the beginning of a long, unforgiving war for his autonomy. A knock at the door pulled Ethan out of an uneasy morning. Two CPS workers stood outside with clipboards and serious faces. They asked to speak with him regarding an allegation of child abandonment. Ethan felt the floor dip beneath him as the accusation sank in. He invited them inside while fighting the rising pulse in his throat. One worker explained that Abigail had filed a report against him. She claimed Ethan was refusing responsibility for her unborn child. Ethan gripped the back of a chair to steady himself. He told them the conception happened through a criminal act without consent. He explained the police investigation and the evidence already submitted. The workers exchanged glances that held both concern and confusion. They asked for documents, and Ethan retrieved his organized folder. He laid out the emails, the clinic reports, and the recorded admission. The workers reviewed each page with widening eyes. Their tone softened as they realized the severity of what happened. They assured Ethan they would update the file with accurate information. But they warned him that Abigail might continue making claims. Ethan nodded, aware this was another front in an expanding battle. After they left, he collapsed into a chair and exhaled shakily. He felt the intrusion echo through his apartment like an alarm. Before he could collect himself, his phone buzzed with a new message. It was Lauren, demanding to talk and insisting he was ruining her life. Ethan deleted the message without replying. Minutes later, Abigail sent a desperate voicemail asking him to reconsider. Her voice was sharp with panic as she insisted the baby needed him. Ethan saved the voicemail for documentation and blocked her number. Despite the blocks, they both showed up at his workplace later that week. They cornered him in the parking lot before he could reach the building. Abigail clutched her stomach as if the gesture could guilt him. Lauren accused him of abandoning them and causing unnecessary chaos. Ethan stepped back and warned them he would call security. Their expressions shifted from pleading to furious resentment. Employees passing by slowed, sensing tension spilling into the open. Ethan called security, and the women were escorted from the property. He filed another report with his lawyer as soon as he reached his desk. His lawyer responded quickly, urging him to request a no-contact order. Ethan agreed and felt a wave of bitter relief as paperwork moved forward. That evening, he sat alone, replaying the confrontation in his mind. He wondered how two people could twist the truth so easily. He wondered if they believed their own justifications. His phone vibrated again, this time from the detective on his case. The detective confirmed that Abigail and Lauren had violated boundaries. He advised Ethan to avoid all communication and remain vigilant. Ethan thanked him, though gratitude tasted hollow these days. The air in his apartment felt tight and unforgiving. He walked to the window, watching passing cars blur into streaks of color. He felt trapped between anger and exhaustion, with no room to breathe. He pressed his palms to the cool glass, grounding himself in silence. It struck him that his life was being reshaped by threats and lies. But beneath the fear, something steadier began to rise. It was resolve, sharp and unyielding, refusing to let him fold. Ethan turned from the window and sat at his desk again. He opened his evidence folder and added the latest reports. He knew the storm was far from over, but he also knew he would not let it consume him. Legal letters began arriving at Ethan's door in thick envelopes. Each one carried new demands or accusations that twisted reality further. Abigail's attorney claimed she deserved financial support during the pregnancy. The request for $2,500 per month stunned Ethan. He reread the document twice, unable to believe the entitlement it carried. His lawyer called within minutes, already aware of the outrageous filing. He assured Ethan they would respond firmly and dismantle every claim. Ethan listened quietly, feeling anger coiled tight beneath his ribs. He wondered how anyone could believe he owed anything to this deception. Over the next days, more documents arrived filled with emotional language. They accused him of moral neglect, psychological harm, and abandonment. Each accusation felt like a blow aimed directly at his character. Ethan responded with evidence, calmly and relentlessly, guided by his lawyer. He submitted copies of the recording, clinic letters, and police reports. Every piece made the opposing claims crack under their own contradictions. Meanwhile, Lauren's family began reaching out with unwanted persistence. They sent long messages, urging him to reconsider and show compassion. They insisted Lauren had made a mistake out of love, not malice. Ethan deleted each message, without letting the guilt sink its hooks in. He knew compassion did not require surrendering his autonomy or safety. Late one evening, his lawyer scheduled a strategy meeting over video call. They discussed expanding the case to include civil damages. Ethan hesitated, unsure if he wanted more conflict added to the chaos. His lawyer explained that clear consequences were essential to prevent escalation. Ethan agreed slowly, realizing justice required more than survival. He gathered new statements from the clinic director and CPS workers. Each document strengthened the narrative of criminal misconduct and coercion. His lawyer compiled everything into a growing file, nearly an inch thick. Ethan watched the case form like a shield built piece by piece. Even so, the constant pressure wore at him in quiet, painful ways. Sleeping became difficult, filled with dreams of accusations and locked doors. At work, he felt eyes lingering on him, curious about the earlier scene. He ignored the whispers and focused on tasks with rigid discipline. One afternoon, another letter arrived from Abigail's attorney. It threatened to pursue full paternal recognition in court. Ethan felt a cold wave rush through him at the boldness of the threat. He forwarded the letter to his lawyer without a moment of delay. Within an hour, his lawyer filed motions countering every claim. The motions asserted clearly that the pregnancy resulted from criminal actions. They requested legal protections, ensuring Ethan bore no obligations. Seeing the language in print gave Ethan a rare moment of relief. He realized he was no longer reacting to chaos, but shaping the battle ahead. The next week brought a mandatory mediation meeting scheduled by the court. Ethan attended with his lawyer, feeling tension knotting his shoulders. Abigail arrived with a visibly swollen belly and a glare filled with resentment. Lauren sat beside her, eyes red but defiant as ever. Their attorney pushed for emotional arguments rather than legal facts. Ethan remained silent while his lawyer countered with precise, controlled responses. Every point Abigail's side raised collapsed under evidence Ethan provided. By the end of the session, their attorney looked visibly shaken. The court ordered additional hearings to resolve the escalating conflict. Walking out of the courthouse, Ethan felt drained but strangely steady. He understood now that this fight was not just about clearing his name. It was about reclaiming his right to decide the future of his own life. The courtroom felt colder than Ethan expected when the final hearing began. He sat beside his lawyer, hands folded tightly to keep them still. Across the room, Abigail and Lauren whispered to each other with tense faces. Their attorney shuffled papers nervously, already sensing the case slipping away. The judge entered with a stern expression that silenced the room instantly. He reviewed the files stacked before him, pages marked with colored tabs. Ethan felt his pulse thrum as every piece of evidence waited to be examined. The prosecutor summarized the investigation with crisp, unwavering clarity. He detailed the unauthorized clinic access and the technician's dismissal. He presented Lauren's recorded confession as irrefutable proof of misconduct. The audio played loudly, echoing through the silent courtroom. Lauren stared at her hands, while Abigail blinked back tears of frustration. The judge's expression hardened as the recording revealed motive and intent. Next, the prosecutor submitted the clinic's internal reports and timestamps. He outlined how Abigail knowingly accepted the stolen sample for the procedure. Abigail's attorney attempted to argue emotional circumstances and desperation. The judge interrupted, stating emotions did not excuse criminal actions. Ethan felt a weight loosen in his chest as the judge dismantled each argument. CPS records were introduced showing Abigail's false abandonment claims. The judge frowned deeply at the manipulation of child protection systems. He questioned Abigail directly about her accusations filed in bad faith. Her voice cracked as she admitted fear and confusion drove her actions. But the judge reminded her that fear did not justify fraud or coercion. Lauren was asked to stand and give her statement under oath. She spoke in a trembling whisper, saying she only wanted to help her friend. The judge pressed her on whether she understood consent was required. Lauren broke down, admitting she ignored the consequences to get what she wanted. Her attorney attempted a final plea for leniency based on emotional turmoil. The judge remained unmoved and called for a brief recess to finalize rulings. Ethan stepped outside the courtroom and breathed in the hallway's still air. His lawyer assured him the outcome leaned overwhelmingly in his favor. When they returned, the judge read the verdict with precise, unwavering tone. Both Lauren and Abigail were found guilty of multiple violations. They received suspended sentences with mandatory supervision. They were fined heavily and ordered to attend corrective counseling programs. They were barred from contacting Ethan indefinitely without court approval. In the civil ruling, the court ordered them to pay Ethan's legal fees in full. They were also required to sign a permanent waiver renouncing any claims to him. The judge made it clear that Ethan bore no paternal rights or obligations. A separate ruling confirmed he was not the child's legal father under any law. Ethan felt something inside him finally unclench after months of strain. Lauren sobbed quietly, while Abigail stared blankly at the table in defeat. The courtroom slowly emptied as the clerk recorded the decisions. Ethan remained seated for a moment, letting the reality settle into him. His lawyer placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder, signaling closure. As Ethan walked out of the courthouse, the sunlight felt strangely unfamiliar. The battle was over, but the emotional wounds still throbbed beneath the relief. He knew healing would take time, but the path ahead was finally his again. For the first time in months, he felt the edges of freedom returning. The final confrontation settled into a quiet understanding as each truth rose to the surface. The family gathered around the table with a calm that felt fragile, yet deeply earned. Voices carried less anger now, and more exhaustion shaped by weeks of emotional storms. No one pretended the wounds were gone, but each person agreed to stop tearing them open. Forgiveness did not arrive as a grand gesture, but as a slow nod shared between hesitant eyes. They accepted that healing would require time, patience, and small efforts made consistently. Old fears loosened their grip as the weight of hidden stories finally lifted from their hearts. The house felt lighter, as if the walls themselves exhaled after holding too many secrets. A new chapter opened with quiet footsteps and renewed hope guiding their decisions. They chose to walk forward not as perfect individuals, but as a family willing to try again.